Good afternoon, everyone. I think we all know everyone here, so we can take a second. I believe we should have the, or we need to give Bethany a minute to put the minutes in the chat. Okay, well, first we'll take a look at the agenda. If everyone wants to take a second to look at that, and then we will review minutes after that. So basically in the agenda, we are going to review the minutes. We're going to discuss the virtual job fair. We're going to discuss webinars and then other topics for the employment committee, and then schedule our next meeting. I'll just give you guys a minute to look that over. And then everybody, if you take a minute to look at the minutes, and I'll give you a few minutes to look over the minutes. And then when somebody wants to accept them, if they could do it in chat or on their unmute their microphone. Does anybody want to accept the minutes? You can either unmute your microphone or type in chat. Okay, I do need somebody two people to accept the minutes so we can move on, please.
I'm getting a comment in the chat that people are, at least one person is having an issue opening the files. I just want to check to make sure everyone can open the files in the chat.
Okay, we'll wait a second.
If you can either pop open your screen to let us know or text me.
Move to accept them.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The vote to accept them, the minutes?
Did you check? Are you approving them, Paul?
Yes.
Accepting, move to
Okay.
accept.
Okay, anybody can second that?
I'll second it.
Jen is
Thank you.
seconding.
Jen is second. Perfect. Okay. And I think we have Betsy here. So Betsy, we were just reviewing the minutes in the agenda.
That's fine. Sorry, I was having trouble getting in. I don't know why.
I'm glad you made it.
All right, I made it.
Okay, so I thought we would just kind of start off by discussing the virtual job fair. So again, I think we had 247 people, but I think one person wasn't able to make it. Um, So does anybody have any comments about what they liked about the job fair? What we could do better? Let's start there. What we liked and what we could do better. I'm just looking for comments. Jan?
I thought it was our first one and we were kind of rushed putting it together. It went really well. I didn't see Wednesday, but I was there for most of Tuesday just observing and then on Thursday. And I think in the future, if we did it again, we would need a little more time to put it together and get more employers involved and get word out more.
I agree. I think we are trying to get it out for that month and all that kind of thing. So I agree that it was a lot of pressure to do that. The only thing I could comment to that, I know on Thursday we got a little too personal on one person. So I think we got to make sure that if somebody is talking about a particular case that we don't talk about it, that we could actually, what we could do is maybe do a breakout room at the end. And if they want to stay after the meeting and talk with that employer and off the main screen, then that might be something that way they don't feel like they're not being heard, because you don't want them to not feel heard.
Right.
But that we have a place to direct them so that everybody else doesn't have to hear anything. So that was kind of the only thing that I know it's hard to control and we didn't really have a plan for that, but I think maybe that's something we could do in the future.
Yeah, in the chat, I asked the woman for her contact information and told her I would make sure and get it to Teresa and that she would be contacting her. And she did.
Yeah, wonderful.
She got an interview. I don't know what happened, but she was setting up an interview with her. So yeah, but I didn't know how to handle that. Like, again, to feel heard. I didn't want her to feel cut off. And
exactly. So that's why I was saying maybe that might be a good option, that we say we're going to, if you can wait after the meeting, that way they're still heard, but just not heard by everybody, that we can put them in one of those chat rooms. Bethany, is that something that you could do? Would that be difficult for you to do? Just to...
I don't think that would be difficult to do. I also think perhaps we could also maybe limit the amount of time that each person has for a comment. Like, you have 2 minutes, that's done routinely in other meetings. And if you run over the 2 minutes, then it needs to be, here's the contact information for this employer, this person that has concerns. Just as an idea.
Yeah, so we could either do something like put your information on chat and we will have that person get back to you. Ernest, you had a comment?
Yes, I did have a comment. Another thing I think regarding the job fair, yes, more time to plan and also more advertising, perhaps to the schools, to the universities. I was contacted by agencies and organizations, people who might have graduated, like the School for the Deaf, people who might have graduated, or people who might be interested in some kind of employment over the summer. And I'd love to host something just for the Rhode Island School for the Deaf students, even though it's a very small population. But we had to keep this open to the public, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely for colleges with deaf and hard of hearing students, we need to get the word out so that we can recruit those attendees, and then to the community at large. I think we can do that, to reach out again to the schools and colleges, and we get a larger group. And then, or we could even separate it into one that's more academic based and one that goes out to the community. And one of the companies contacted me and said that a lot of people in their group were interested in interviewing. And in fact, they did have several interviews. So that was one positive outcome. That was one very beneficial thing. So I'm very happy about that. So it was a success story after our hard work. So at least that one very good thing did happen.
And like I said, being our first time and doing it quick, I do think we do need more time. So I think that at least we got it under our belt. I know Jeannie, you had a question?
Who had
Jeannie?
Jen? Oh,
Jeannie did. She had her hand up, but maybe she doesn't have a question. Okay, Betsy.
I think it'd be really interesting to do the job fair for the Rhode Island School for the Deaf. I think we would learn more. And some of the jobs I thought were really suitable for young people. They talked about lifting things. You know, I was on the day where Amazon, and it was all about, you know, being physically active and lifting their cartons and things like that. And I think the young people may be interested in that kind of work.
I think if we had maybe more employers to choose, then we could kind of be more specific in who we target each day to. So that could be something we look into. Jeannie, you came on. You have a question, Jeannie?
yes. I apologize. I may have misunderstood. I meant to, a lot of people went to the Amazon and applied and got interviews, and I was basically clapping. I just think
Okay.
it's a, you know, I just think it's fantastic that we did it in such a short time. We got, what was it, 6 or 7 employers to join us in such a short time. I think it was fantastic, given the limitations and the fact that it was virtual. So, you know, next time we'll build in time in between things. I agree with, you know, we'll work it all out so that we have plenty of time in between for any kind of figuring things out.
So what would we think of doing something maybe in the spring with a 3-month lead out? Like something like you start in January and then have 3 months to kind of plan and have a week where then we, you know, reserve people for a week. And then we can find out, you know, try to group people by categories, but have a lot more a lead time. Anybody have any
Yeah.
comments? Okay, Jean.
Jeannie's saying, sounds great. Is the more time, the better, definitely. Rhode Island School for the Deaf will be planning a college fair. And it'll talk about financial aid workshops and virtual internet classes and all kinds of things. And so we're working on that now. We're coming up with the plans for that now. So if anybody here knows of a college that's recruiting, you know, because that's starting in the spring. So we do want to, you know, be mindful of that. Just, it's something for everyone to think about.
Jeannie, do you have like a date or a week or somewhere where you're trying that's going to be taking place?
We don't have that yet. I think it's going to be the month of January.
Okay. Okay. So what would
And
we,
then, yeah, ahead of the big rush, definitely.
so what would we think of starting to plan in January for a week in March? Or we could do Hearing Loss Awareness Month, which is May. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Betsy?
Yeah, I like the idea of doing May. I like it also because May is a time, especially if we do as Ernest suggests, reach out to colleges. It's a time when that group of people is changing things up and maybe graduating or looking for summer work. I think May would be a really good month to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Anybody else have any comments?
Definitely.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Ernest?
Yeah, I did want to mention Sean who's working with us. Sean Feldman is working with us. And he could probably give a 5 or 10 minute presentation. We did have him on the agenda, excuse me, Shane. So I just wanted to let you know he did arrive. He is here.
Okay, Shane, if you want to give your presentation, then we'll proceed with the rest of our meeting.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. Very nice to see everyone. My name is Shane Feldman. And I work for a company. I am the head of the company called Inevi Strategies. And we're working with the Rhode Island Commission on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing to provide support for this transition for the new executive director and to develop some strategic goals. So we're just now working on that. And I'm gathering information, and we're going to start measuring some of the things that the Rhode Island deaf community is looking for. So I've been in touch with each and every committee. I'm just kind of showing up, introducing myself. And I'd really like to see this on part of our dashboard at a very high level, this high level information about the community. I want to look at their working situations. I want to have a good understanding of employment for deaf people and hard of hearing people in Rhode Island. And once I have that type of information, I'll put it in a dashboard and do some analysis and try to figure out how we can network with resources and gather data to further our mission. I'll also be looking at other states who have commissions on the deaf and hard of hearing to see how they measure success in terms of employment in their community. Not only employment, but education, health, everything you can think of. So I wanted to talk with the group now, and I'm just a quick question. I'm curious about what sort of data do you use to measure the success of the deaf and hard of hearing community in Rhode Island? Do you use unemployment rates? Do you use some other type of statistics to determine how Rhode Island government is doing in terms of supporting deaf people in the state and the hard of hearing people in the state? And I'll let anyone, I saw Jan's hand up. Please feel free to answer.
So as far as I know, we don't have those kind of statistics unless they're somewhere I don't know about. I mean, deaf and hard of hearing people don't like register and say, I'm deaf, I'm hard of hearing, count me, I'm working or I'm not working. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that we have those kind of numbers. Do we?
Maybe it would be helpful to ask a question of what have you used historically over the years to get an understanding of whether or not people are successfully working in the state of Rhode Island. How do you measure that? Denise, your microphone is off.
Sorry, thank you. Jan, I know you've been working with the deaf and hard of hearing in employment for a very long time. I know probably referrals, how many referrals you get to different agencies for employment help. Maybe that might be it. I know working with Goodwill and working with the Office of Rehabilitation Services. I don't, again, I'm not directly in employment, so I don't.
Yeah. So I used to have a better handle on that. And a lot of times it was like how many people were coming in my office asking for services. But I think somebody from ORS might be able to answer this, because I know if someone is just deaf.
ORS.
Yeah, Office of Rehab Services. And we have people here because I think they're working to get people off the waiting list. But if you're just deaf for the past few years, you weren't getting, they weren't taking you on.
You
Correct?
need multiple disabilities.
Maybe you can speak to this.
Jen or Paul, could you chime in on this?
I'm not really clear on the question. I mean, we track how many people we close successfully, which would be employed, how many people are closed prior to plan, or how many people are in plan. I've never seen those figures like aggregated into a study But we certainly keep track of that. If that's,
Jane, it's a difficult question. I don't know if there's anybody that unfortunately has the answer to that question, other than people that are maybe signing up for employment services. So maybe, Paul, we could ask, is there a lot of people signing up that are deaf and hard of hearing for employment services, more so than in the past, or?
I haven't seen a huge increase or decrease. I've only been there a couple of years. But again, that's probably trackable. I don't know that it's, that it's in one place where we could look at it, but we certainly have historic case records, especially now since we have an electronic database. So we certainly know who's been through, who's been employed successfully, who's been closed, prior to a plan being developed, or who's been closed unsuccessfully for whatever reason.
Thank you, Paul. Betsy, do you have anything from the Hearing Association regarding employment?
I don't. We wouldn't have anything. The only thing, I mean, we use you a lot, Denise. A lot of hard of hearing people need the technology and the equipment from your program. And it just occurred to me, I don't know what kind of records, your captioning program keeps. Do you ask people if they're working?
A lot of times,
Yeah.
a lot of times people that are working don't qualify for the ATEL program, so I refer them out to other agencies. So Shane, I work for a state program called ATEL, the Adaptive Telephone Equipment Loan Program. So we provide free telephones, landline, and wireless to the deaf and hard of hearing if they income criteria. So if they're unemployed, we might see them. I don't tend to, believe it or not, get a younger employment, people that are looking for my services, but we are available to them if they do meet our income criteria. So sorry, Shane, I don't think we have exactly the information you're looking for.
No worries at all. That's really the purpose of my being here today, is to begin that dialogue with you. Not only with you, but I'm doing this with other states and other programs. For example, Ernest Covington and we're just talking about the resources, who to contact on a national level, like the National Deaf Center. There's a place in Texas, but they don't have research. They're not a research, they don't have data. So they do surveys, and we want to understand the whole employment situation around the country. That's what we're looking for. So we're trying to identify metrics, whatever they may be. So that's helpful for me, because how many cases close successfully, that would be one metric. How many people sign up for employment services is another metric. So those are the kinds of things that are helpful. That shows us that people need employment support, and then we do need to measure it on a national level successfully for the deaf and hard of hearing community, so that we have a good picture of that. So it's a good conversation to have. And I think what I want to do is identify how we can describe the goal for employment to the community. And once we describe that well, we can start reaching out and surveying agencies and asking the right questions, so that we can build a database and get the information that we need. It could be a funding issue. We have the HSTP program, as you may know of, that Christine West is running, and it's incredible. But that's the type of thing you have to ask for to get the funding. And so we may have to ask for a system to get these metrics that we're looking for. And so I figured I would ask you if there was an immediate answer that would be useful. And we could document that. But if you have other ideas, or if you have another insight about how, you know, you measure the success of employment in the deaf and hard of hearing community, I'd love to hear it if something occurs to you.
Jeannie?
Hi, Shane. My name is Jeannie Desmaris, and I work at the Rhode Island School for the Deaf. I'm the transition coordinator. So I work with high school students planning for their futures. And I don't know if this information is helpful, but under the Rhode Island Department of Education, we call that RIDE, when a student graduates, a year later, RIDE requires that we check in with them and get information about them and find out what they're doing, whether they went to college and if they stayed in college, whether they're working and so forth. So we do gather that data and we give it back to RIDE. It's only limited to the people who graduated from Rhode Island School for the Deaf. So it's a little bit of information, but that may be worthwhile. And then you could say that might overlap with what ORS does. It could be the very same person who graduates from our school and then goes on for ORS services. So there could be overlap. And I notice you're collecting data from other states. Maybe the way they measure could be helpful to us if you can share that with us. Yeah, well, the reason why I'm meeting with the commissions first is I want to understand their internal information gathering system before I contact other states. Because if I don't understand what's happening here, it'll be a little bit awkward to talk with other states. So I wanted to start with Rhode Island, whom I'm working for, and find out what we do have and then take it from there. My next step would then be to talk with other states to see what they're doing. And they could benefit from our information. We could benefit from their information. And also, I like your suggestion. Maybe we could talk to that, where the notion of the graduates and then also ORS cases that are open and then successfully closed. Yes, there may be an overlap, but it would be good to still measure success within the state. So those are two metrics I like, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit more. We can see what that looks like. We can see, I don't know how we can put it in writing, but I wonder if you could share some of that information with me.
Betsy?
I'm a teacher in a job training program at an organization called Amos House. And I know that we get funding from both the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. And there are application forms where they ask folks if they're disabled in any way. So I'm wondering, the Department of Education doesn't collect that data so readily, but I'm wondering if the Department of Labor does, and maybe somebody here knows that. And maybe it's, maybe, that would be just for people who apply for the money for training programs. But perhaps there's some statistics from the Department of Labor that we might be able to look at.
That's a great idea too, Betsy. And Shane, we're a very new committee. We're less than a year, so we're brand new. So I think it is good to have some kind of way to track and measure things and try to help the people that we're trying to help. So I'll send out an email after and we'll see if we can get some contacts, and I don't know if I have your email, or I'm sure Ernest can send that to me, and we can keep you linked up and see what information we can get to you. All right. Thank you, Shane.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I did not expect an immediate answer. And I know that this is kind of put you on the spot. I didn't expect you to respond, but I really appreciate your willingness to give me your time. And I think it benefits me, and I think it will benefit you, because I think when we talk about working together, I can support the commission better with this data.
Absolutely. I know we had a comment, I think Jeannie said, would Rhode Island census have information on specific populations for the deaf and hard of hearing? So that's another another avenue. So like I said, I think we'll put it out there and see what we can come up with and get back to you.
Definitely.
All right, thank you, Shane.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to join your meeting. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll sign off now.
So we'll go back to our agenda. So I think what we're looking to do is in January, we'll reconvene, start thinking about May. And if anybody has any comments, and they don't want to say it out loud, they want to send it to me privately of what you'd like to see that we didn't do, what you liked or think about it, so that we can maybe just start thinking next year on that. So our next topic is webinars. We did 2 webinars that last month. One was on writing resumes, and the other one was on LinkedIn and social networking. So I think they were well received. I watched and they look fabulous. I don't know, Bethany, do you have any comments on how you thought those went?
I think they went really well. I believe the first one was a little more well attended than the second one. I found them to have so much information. It was a great resource. One of the things that working with Ernest on doing is we're trying to make a video archive page for all of our meetings and all of these resources, the webinars on the commission webpage. So that should be coming up soon. So it's something that even though it was in high attendance, it had such great information that it's really great that we can reference that.
Wonderful. And how difficult was it for you? Was that a lot of work for you, Bethany?
Not really, specifically with those presenters, because they were real pros and really high energy. They had all of their stuff ready and prepared.
Okay.
I wish there was a little bit more interaction from participants, but as people get to know all the resources that we're able to provide, I think we'll have more participation.
Well, thank you. You did a wonderful job. So thank you, Bethany. I was just thinking going forward, maybe we wanted to do other topics, and maybe I was thinking the frequency of maybe every other month having a new webinar topic come up. Does anybody have any comments on whether they'd like to do future webinars? Ernest?
I think we should focus on tips for interviewing. I think that topic would be really important. And as far as the resumes, we need to find things that people are interested in. I think there's interest in maybe meeting with government officials for interviews, nonprofits, even for-profits as well. I think we need to think about different groups. So there are different types of interviews, and people will know what to expect based on the type of employment. Because each interview, it might look a lot different depending on the entity that they're applying to. For deaf and hard of hearing people, I think people need to understand really how to say appropriately, how to say things in the appropriate way in an interview, how to really emphasize and sell themselves, emphasize their strengths, and indicate that they want the job. They may feel that other people have an advantage, but I think it's important that deaf people learn to stress that they really want the job and that they have something to offer. And I think the resume writing was good, but I do think interview skills is an area that we could definitely highlight. Deaf and hard of hearing people in interviews don't necessarily shine, and I think it'd be nice to work on that.
Thank you. Betsy?
I agree, because for me, my high power hearing aids will reach, say, 6 feet pretty comfortably. And I was in an interview at Community College of Rhode Island. It was in a big table and there was someone who was way too far away. So I have to know that I can say, you know, can people move in so I can hear you? Or would it be okay for me to bring a device that would get a bigger range of sound to my hearing aids? I mean, I think having somebody who actually is a hearing aid user, my group, my Hearing Loss Association group would be, I think, interested in that. Basically, how do you say that I need an accommodation? And this is the type of thing I would need people to sit in certain places, or I would need captions. I try to be upfront in my interviews to say that I have a disability and that I'm very experienced in setting up what I need, and it won't be a problem, you know. But there's a, you know, there's some of that I have to say, because I do use spoken language, but it's not like putting on a pair of glasses where people assume, oh, you have your glasses on now, you can see.
Mhm.
You know, I have my hearing aids here, but I need there not to be background noise, and I need people in close, or I need to bring an FM system, that kind of thing. And I need your telephone set up in my office on my desk with captions, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Betsy. Jan?
Well, sort of just to piggyback on that, interview skills I think are essential because that's somebody's first impression with an employer. But what Betsy was just talking about was a lot of self-advocacy. And I'm wondering if we could do a workshop for self-advocacy, because I think a lot of the younger deaf people are better at that than the older people that just kind of, you know, but I think it is getting better, but I think that wouldn't hurt, you know, like making sure that they get what they need.
Jeannie? Thank you, Jan.
Yeah, hi again. Yeah, I've provided interview skills workshops to deaf people, and I've also taught juniors and seniors how to interview. And we do a little bit on self-advocacy, how to use an interpreter during an interview. So a lot of students, you know, they go to a job interview and they see an interpreter there, but they don't understand that they should probably introduce the interpreter. They should probably help the interpreter prepare. So it's important to include that for deaf and hard of hearing people, to say what they need in terms of communication access. And that runs the gamut. Some people speak for themselves and just use the interpreter to sign. And the employer may not understand what the interpreter is doing there. So they need to explain what the interpreter is doing. And I love what Betsy said about the table being too big and asking people to move in a little bit closer, because those things are barriers. So sometimes you have to ask people to move. Sometimes you may have to explain why the interpreter is sort of behind the hearing person. Those are a lot of things that really make a difference. So yeah, that should be included in any training.
Jeannie, would you also say there could be some kind of I don't know if you have it already, a document that you can make available that also gives people tips, or something they could hand to an employer or something like that? Do you have anything like that with the School for the Deaf?
Well, we do have a PowerPoint. It's for younger folks, but it certainly can be modified to a general audience. So maybe we could add to it, for an older audience. I can see what's there and do modifications accordingly. Yeah, tips. They could be broad things. I mean, there could be a million of them. So yeah, you have to kind of narrow it down.
Jan?
I've recently been doing sort of job seeking skills one-on-one with a few people. And so I searched out and found, I'm still looking for more videos that are signed, talking about interviewing and work behaviors on the job and those kind of things. So there are those out. I found a couple of really good ones. We could maybe include that kind of thing.
Jeannie, do you think you would be interested in, since you've done something on interviewing skills, maybe doing a webinar, but opening it to other people that are just on interviewing skills? Or do you know of somebody that would want to do that for our next webinar?
Yeah. Let me think about it.
Okay.
How, I need to know some parameters, how long, how much information, how do we break it down? A little more information would help me answer that question. Also, I think about this Hispanic population as well. Would we need a Spanish translator for access? Those kinds of things come to mind. We have deaf Hispanics in Providence. So yeah, a webinar. It
Now, if
definitely
you're-
makes.
Jeannie, if you're talking about deaf Hispanics, if they're signing, wouldn't that be relevant for a Spanish speaking as well?
Well, we have people who are just learning ASL. They're new to the
Okay.
country, so they're new ASL learners. And a lot of times we use graphic things, pictures. Margie Malloy also probably has a good handle on folks who use English proficiently and folks who don't. She'd be a good source of information at OSL.
Bethany, oh, sorry. Okay, Betsy, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm thinking a little step further. A number of people in the Hearing Loss Association group lost chunks of their hearing late in life and are in the category of late deafened. And we had the Disability Law Center come and talk about your rights on the job. Because if all of a sudden I know folks who have had good jobs who have quit the job because they feel like they can't do the job anymore with hearing aids. It's just not the same. These, folks maybe were close to retirement age, but so I think there's, something also, there's self-advocacy, but there's also just knowing your basic rights as a disabled person in the workforce. So, it's maybe we're focused on getting the job, but I just off of this conversation started thinking about, once you have the job and things come up, can we address that, for people who are working? Right.
Great point, Betsy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like do an ADA workshop, maybe.
What's that?
American
NAD.
Disabilities Act.
Sorry, I didn't hear the.
So yeah, that, and just so they know like what a reasonable accommodation is and all those catchwords that they use in that law.
I actually think that is, I know somebody from the Disability Law Center. I'm sure they would be very happy to do a webinar on that. And I think that it crosses all disability lines. So I think it would be relevant for very many populations. So I think that's a great subject, and it kind of gets into self-advocacy as well, that if you know your rights, then you know what's acceptable and what's not. And if you aren't getting your rights, then you know who to contact. So I think that is a great one that we can look into. Bethany, how long do you think the webinars, what do you think from doing the two you did, what do you think a good amount of time and allotted to something like that would be?
Oh, your microphone's off, Bethany.
We all do it. We all do it.
Every time. I would think like 45 minutes of, topic, whatever the topic is, and then at least 15 minutes for public discussion, comments, would probably be best. I think like over an hour, people have a little bit of a harder time carving up that time. So,
Okay, that sounds so, yeah, that sounds great. So maybe we'll start with the next one. Why we'll let Jeannie think things over about trying to do a skills one, but maybe I'll work on doing one for self-advocacy and knowing your rights. Go ahead, Bethany.
didn't unmute myself. So I would, just as an idea, I think if it's something that's more participation based, I wouldn't say that limit of an hour. Like if Jeannie was doing something that was like, okay, I'm going to show this to you and then you're going to try it. I think you would definitely need like a full hour and a half. I'm not sure what Jeannie would think of that, but I feel if it's more like information and resource, I kind of think people, they kind of start to zone out at about an hour, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything to add about this topic? So we're going to try to finish up here in the next 10 minutes. So anybody else on that topic? Okay, so so those are some thoughts and we'll think about that, and anybody reach out to me, but we'll like put those 2 webinar ideas in that maybe we can get them at some point this year, maybe the next month or 2. And then let's see, our next agenda item is, does anybody have any other topics they want the employment committee to touch upon? Is there any other ideas or thoughts that you think should be a focus of the employment committee? Okay. So again, if I think somebody's, okay, Jan, here you are, Jan.
I don't know. I was thinking years ago at Goodwill, we started a group for deaf people who had jobs to talk about how they felt being the only deaf person with all hearing coworkers. And I guess that's not like a workshop kind of thing, but I'm just wondering if, some kind of like, I don't know what the format would be, but
Like a community discussion.
It was very, very useful, so that they could talk to each other about how they felt, being isolated, feeling isolated on the job, and just have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or a group
Yeah.
discussion group. Yeah,
So
definitely.
I don't know if that's something that this committee could do.
Sounds good.
I think that sounds great. I think that's wonderful. That's a good thought process, because I think when everybody can say what the actual problems they've actually faced, then that's actually easier to address. So I think that's really a great idea. So thank you. Jeannie had a statement or question?
Yeah. Another topic might be, and this is down the road, but advancing yourself in your career within your job. If you've worked at a place for a long time, knowing how to get to the next level of employment, maybe taking leadership training for deaf people, or, and I think providing a workshop on something like that. Of course, we'd have to bring in a specialist to talk about leadership within a company, whether it's profit, nonprofit, but we definitely, the notion of advancement within an employment situation. And Ernest is saying, yeah, I second that. We've had a few people talk to us about that, their work experience. And you're absolutely right, Jeannie, that they feel like they are the only deaf person there. And I think a discussion group about that would be really nice. Something maybe for the state people sometimes get stuck in one position for a long time. And they see other people advancing, but they don't know where their opportunities are, or there feels like fewer opportunities to advance. And so they end up in the same position for years. And they don't really have peers. You know, they feel like they should be working. They've been there longer, and oftentimes a boss comes along who's even younger than they are. And that can be a really awkward situation. And I've heard that story dozens of times. So Jeannie, I love that idea. The notion of advancement in employment, knowing how that's done. You know, one area, this is Jeannie, that deaf and hard of hearing talk about is they have difficulty negotiating. They don't know how to negotiate better in their position, selling themselves and saying, I think I deserve to be promoted. And here are the reasons why. So maybe they just don't know that they're supposed to do that. Maybe they don't know that they should be on different committees or offer to lead different projects, and that they don't realize why they're staying, you know, at a level position, because they don't know how to advance themselves or what opportunities to take advantage of to show that they're motivated and interested in advancing.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeannie. I think that's great, just discussion points. And if people have ideas of speakers on these topics or who would like to do that, if they just want to reach out. So we're at the last few minutes. So I'd like to just schedule our next meeting, and we can think about all the topics that we've discussed. And if anybody has speakers for any of these topics, or like I said, I know somebody from the Disability Law Center, so I'll look into that part. So here's the question, do we want to meet monthly or bi-monthly at this point? If I could get everybody's opinion on that. Betsy?
I think we should ask Ernest, because I think there's a certain budget for committees in terms of interpreters and CART providers. I don't know. I just heard about this a little last night at the commission meeting. So I like the every other month idea, and we may be constrained a bit because of the cost of the interpretation, but I don't know if we have any, if we decide to meet every week, I'm pretty sure we'd be told
Yeah.
that won't work.
So Ernest, can you answer that? Is there frequency concerns if it's monthly versus bi-monthly?
Yes. I think currently fiscal year 2021, we're fine. The budget's no problem. I'm not even worried there's not going to be a cut. But for 2022, that's when it's going to be tricky. That's when I'm starting to worry. And we are going to have to cut 15% of our budget. So we have to be very careful then. But for now, if you want to meet monthly, I have no issue with that. It's not going to be a problem whatsoever. We don't have to worry now, but we may have to worry later. But it's up to you how often you want to meet. And we're going to be having our strategic plan, and we're going to get some good advice on how to use our budget effectively, but that's not a concern at this point.
Thank you, Ernest. Jan?
So maybe for the rest of 2020, we could kind of split the difference. Because if we wait 2 months, we're going to be into Christmas. But if we
Okay.
month, it's Thanksgiving. So maybe we should try and set something up for beginning or mid-December.
I like that. How about the 10th? Do we, Betsy, I know you're the one that had a concern with the Wednesday. Are you still in December concerned about Wednesdays or Thursdays? Should we keep it Thursday?
I'm teaching pretty much all day on Monday and Wednesday.
Okay,
And
so
I
we'll,
do administrative work on Tuesday and Thursday, but those days are totally flexible.
all right, so why don't
If
we
stay off
try,
of Monday and Wednesday, that would be good.
all right. So how does it sound December 10th? From at 2:30 to 3:30. How does that sound for everybody? Okay. All right, so that will be our next meeting. Thank you, everyone. Paul, you had a question? Okay, you're good? Everybody's good? All right, perfect. Bye, everyone. Right.
Bethany, if you could just stay on the
Okay.
call for a little bit.
Are you all done with me, Bethany? All set?